All right, let's continue with some other market forms, and let's turn now to the monopoly. And let's assume we have a monopolist with the following cost function: 2 plus 2q plus q squared over 2. And the monopolist faces the following inverse demand function. Okay, let's draw them first, so then it makes it a little bit easier. So the demand function goes from 8 till 8. And the supply function is technically also the marginal cost function. So we have to take the marginal cost function, and we get that when we derive the total cost function with respect to q, and then we get 2 plus 2, then it cancels out, so 2 plus q. Okay, so it has a slope of 1. So that's the supply. And so now that we have a monopoly, we know that what a monopolist does is it will make sure that marginal cost equals marginal revenue. But for a monopolist, the total revenue is not a fixed price that originates in a perfectly competitive market, because the monopolist is a price taker. The monopolist knows if she supplies 1, the price will be 7, and at a quantity of 2 will be 6. And at the price of 7 and a quantity demanded of 1, the total revenue will be 7, but at the quantity supplied of 2 and a resulting price of 6, it will be 12. So the marginal revenue is a function of the price. So the total revenue is price as a function of q times q, and specifically our demand function 8 minus q, because that is the price, p of q times q, which is 8q minus q squared. And then the marginal revenue is the derivative of the total revenue so that is 8 minus 2q then. So the point here is that the marginal revenue is always twice as steep as the demand function, at least when we have a linear demand function like here. That will be so now we can see that the marginal revenue equals marginal cost at a quantity of 2. So that will be the profit maximizing quantity for the monopolist. And of course the monopolist will set the price of 6 and choose a quantity of 2. So the profit maximizing quantity is 2, and the profit maximizing quantity, so the profit maximizing quantity is 2, and the profit maximizing price is 6. So how big is consumer surplus? Well, consumer surplus is that triangle here on top which is 2 times 2 over 2, which is 2. How big is the monopolist's profit? Okay, so profit is defined as total revenue minus total cost. So total revenue is 6 times 2, that's 12. And the total cost, when the monopolist produces 2, is 2 plus 4, which is 6, plus 2 squared, 4 over 2, so that is, so total revenue is, so 2 plus 4 plus 4 over 2, so 2 fourths, so total revenue is 6, 8. So 12 minus 8 is 4. How big is the monopolist producer surplus? So producer surplus is this area here. So it's everything below the price and above the marginal cost function. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6. So producer surplus is 6. And total welfare would be 8. Okay. So for questions 7 to 13, now assume that the firm acts as if it were a perfectly competitive firm. Well, if the firm were perfectly competitive, then because the monopolist is producing allocation inefficiently, and allocation inefficiency means that there are still some people whose willingness to pay is actually greater than what it would cost to serve them. But this is loss, so we have a deadweight loss. But in a perfectly competitive market, those people would be served. And then what would happen is, maybe let's remove all the ink here quickly. So now if the market were perfectly competitive, the equilibrium price would be 5 and the equilibrium quantity would be 3. And producer surplus would be this triangle here, 3 times 3 over 2, 4.5, and likewise consumer surplus would be this area, also 4.5. So total surplus would be 9. So the perfectly competitive firm would supply 3, so there is more quantity turned over in the market under perfect competition. And the price would be lower. Instead of 6 for the monopoly, it would be only 5. Consumer surplus, we said, is 4.5. And how big is the perfectly competitive firm's profit? So now we have to take a look again at the definition of profit. So profit, pi, is total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue is 5 times 3, 15, minus total cost, so there will be 2 plus 2 times 3, 6, plus 3 squared, 9 over 2 plus 4.5. So that is 15 minus 12.5 equals 2.5. How big is the perfectly competitive firm's producer surplus? We have already seen this is 4.5. And how big is total surplus? We also saw that is 9, 4.5 for each. And how big is the deadweight loss? Let's put it on the other side. Well, the deadweight loss, because in a monopoly we had this price and this quantity, meaning that this triangle is lost as we make a transition from perfect competition to a monopoly, and that is 0.5 plus 0.5, which is 1. So the deadweight loss is 1. And again, the difference, if you remember when we talked about producer surplus, we said producer surplus is total revenue minus total variable cost, and the profit is total revenue minus total variable cost minus fixed cost. So in other words, we can also write profit as producer surplus, because this is producer surplus here, minus fixed cost. So producer surplus can also be written as profit plus fixed cost. And if you remember, the profit is 2.5 and the fixed cost is 2. So that's where we get the 4.5 from also. Okay, so now let's just stop here and then let's do the last exercise, which is about the monopolistically competitive firm.